the way I was brought up by
Hmm.
my parents, I could do anything any boy could do. That was the upbringing I had. I also had people who I went to, and I said, I'm playing professional sport, and they'd be like, हाँ, but तुम्हारी 2 साल में तो शादी हो जाएगी और फिर हमारा तो advertising नहीं होगा, हम क्या करेंगे, and it was always a roadblock because in those days, the only sport anybody wanted to sponsor was cricket. I feel I can do so much more. I can have babies, which men can't have, and I can do everything they do mostly, right?
Yes.
And the things perhaps that I can't do, I don't think I need to do or want to do. So I'm very happy and sort of secure where I am. What I've learned the most is it's the small, sustainable steps in the right direction
Yeah. Yeah.
that are going to get you healthy in the long term. Discipline and resilience is what really set the foundation for me, my ability to be able to bounce back
Yeah.
from failure, to bounce back from setbacks, to bounce back from times that were hard. Things like yoga, meditation, pranayam, all of those need to be introduced at a very young age and need to be made compulsory.
Yes. Hi, Misha, and welcome to the About Her show, a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us. To tell us about their successes, failures, challenges, ups and downs, all of it. So that, not only do they get a platform to share the journey, the story of their lives, but they also help us inspire other women. Women who are listening in, who have dreams, ambitions, but for some reason are not able to, pursue them. We feel this way by listening to the story of a trailblazing woman, a woman who has done in life what she wanted to. They too can get inspired. And along with such women, we also get men on the show because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. And so we are trying to, kind of make our own contribution towards building a world which is more inclusive, more equal. So, a very, very warm welcome to you. And I must say, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the show. And, well, welcome once again.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to be on this show, especially since it's such an inclusive platform, which is so much the need in today's world. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So then let's get started. And so, you've had a, diverse career from professional squash to sports media, and now you're into wellness and nutrition. So can you just, walk us through this journey and what transpired each transition? And, was it because of the way you were raised or how is it?
So I started off playing squash only when I was 15 years old. Before that, I actually used to run the junior nationals, and so I was an athlete. And that actually my journey with sport and with I was always a tomboy. I was always really sporty and physically active. My
Mhm.
parents really encouraged my sport. They sort of spotted that I was a good runner. My mom used to take me to Nehru Stadium every day to train when I was 10, 11, 12. I loved it.
Mhm.
And my parents' passion is really what fueled my sports journey. I would have never been able to have the opportunities that I did if they hadn't believed that I should play sport if that's what I wanted to do. And if that's what I was talented towards, that's what I was inclined towards. So they really encouraged it, they nurtured it, they supported it, they built it. And so I used to play, I used to run the junior nationals, 100 meters, 200 meters, all of that. And then when I was 15, we moved to Bombay and
Okay.
the monsoons were on in Bombay.
Hmm.
And I couldn't run anywhere because everything, all the grounds, everything was sort of, like ankle deep in water. And this uncle of mine used to play squash, and we just moved, and he said, "Well, why don't you come to, 'cause I was always had a hyper energy, and I needed to get it out some way. I wasn't a quiet, sort of sedentary child,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so he took me to the squash court, and
Okay.
that's how my squash journey began. And then I played squash. I got a squash scholarship to a college in America, and I went and did my college there, which was very fortunate.
Hmm.
And then when I finished college, I was at this threshold where I said, do I really want to go get a job now? I wasn't really, I mean, I'd done an economics degree in college, but I didn't really want to get into the business finance world. Um, and then an opportunity came for me to play the World Squash Championships.
Okay.
And so it was 1 month after I graduated. It was in Canada, which was right there. And
Hmm.
I went and played at one tournament just as a lark.
Okay.
And then I really enjoyed it. And I saw that, I could possibly do this
Huh.
as it was never going to be a long-term career path that I was going to be in. At that point, when you're like 20, 21, you don't really think about these things, right?
Yeah.
You just, when opportunities come your way like this, you're like, oh, let me try it out. Of course, my parents were completely supportive as they've always been,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when we talk about an inclusive culture today, as we are talking about on this show, I think just the fact that I had parents who believed that I could do anything
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
who support me with any decision I made at any point in my life and did everything they could to help me nurture whatever area I wanted to go into. I think that really is what made the difference in my life. And that got me all of those, every step, I mean, squash continued for 5 years. Um, I went on to be India's national champion for 5 years. I played the pro circuit. I got to 27 in the world. I
Hmm.
was number 2 in Asia, lots of ups and downs. And, all through that journey, I knew I had my parents standing right behind me,
Hmm.
no pressure, no questions, no arguments. And that made all the difference, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I'm sure.
So then, for a lot of professional athletes,
Yeah.
um, playing a sport is something that becomes quite a lot of the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
For me, playing squash was an opportunity to do what I loved to do,
Hmm.
also an opportunity to travel the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
make something of a living from it. I mean, I just about broke even, but I didn't really want my parents to pay for something that I sort of looked at my passion. But I was managing to break even. I was traveling the world with a backpack and my squash racket. I traveled extensively. I actually also got onto the board of the Women's Squash Federation internationally. I was on their board for a few years. I
Hmm.
had wonderful opportunities. I had wonderful experiences. I was invited to the Olympic centennial celebrations
Oh,
as a squash representative.
okay.
And I actually gave a talk in front of all sorts of Olympic greats like Samaranch and all of those. So, the
Yeah.
experiences that I got, which was what I was doing this for. Of course, to play the sport, that was my heart, that was my passion. But just the fact to be able to travel the world, live out of a suitcase and a backpack, and just do what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Um, and then I got the Arjuna Award
Yeah. Yeah.
in it was 1996 that
Okay.
they gave it to me for. I got it in 97 at the ceremony, and that's about the time when I said, okay, bas ho
Hmm.
gaya.
Hmm. Hmm.
and and then I decided I needed a break. By then also, you get burnt out. So I'd been playing for about 6 years professionally by then.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, Loved it, but I was done. You know,
Yeah.
it was not. I didn't go into coaching. I didn't want to go into management of sport. None of that. I was sort of looking and saying, what do I want to do next?
Hmm.
And I was in Delhi. My parents were here, and I had this friend at NDTV, Gulu Eskil, who
Hmm.
used to interview me frequently on my squash journeys.
Okay.
And so I was chatting with him one day. He'd become a friend, and he said, "Hey, listen, why don't you come in and do an episode for us, on the morning show." He was anchoring the morning show at that point, doing the sports.
Hmm.
So I went in and he interviewed me and we had this lovely chat. And on the show, he said, so, what's next? So I
Huh.
said, I have absolutely no idea.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we continued to talk. And then the show finished.
Hmm.
Um, the producers came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in sports presenting? And I was like, oh, really? Wow. Something I'd never thought about, journalism and things. So it literally happened like that. And then I met Pranoy and Radhika, who were really angels in my life. They were just amazing. They just adopted me, took me under their wing. And it was a very, after sort of playing squash and living a certain life to suddenly move to another life, it's an unsettling period and transition. And thanks to the NDTV family, I was protected, I was looked after.
Hmm.
I made the transition beautifully. I made some really close friends.
Hmm.
It was just wonderful. And so I sort of anchored there for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got married.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was expecting my first child. And then halfway through that, I said, okay, you know what? I need time out now.
Yeah, yeah.
I was always self-conscious on television. I don't think I was very much a natural anchor. I was always very, you know, self-conscious and things like that. But it was an interesting, fun experience and a very happy place to be. It was a wonderful part of my life, with under the Roy's aegis. It was lovely.
Mm.
Um, and then, I had my children. I spent 10 years not really working, focusing on motherhood, which was very much a priority in my life. I had always wanted a family and children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a happy, happy time. Uh, yeah. Then, I think I lost my dad when I was 42,
Okay.
and he was 66. He was very young.
Oh, yeah.
And I lost him to lung cancer.
Oh, okay.
And he was a smoker, but the lung cancer that he had was a genetic form of lung cancer, which my grandfather also had.
Oh, okay.
And that was really my first sort of wake up call that said, oh, wow, maybe you need to start looking after your health. I mean, you feel you're immortal, your
Yeah,
20s and
yeah.
30s are a time of immortality. You feel like nothing will ever happen to you. And it's only when something happens in your life, like I did with my dad, I started thinking like, wow, okay, maybe I need to consider. And I've always been a very sort of scientific, knowledge-based person.
Mm.
And so I just started to read up more on nutrition, on how, and up until that time, even with my squash, nutrition was never a part of my life. Nobody in those days really talked about nutrition. In
Mm.
fact, if they talked about anything, it was carb loading because you were spending 4 or 5 hours a day training, right? So you needed to eat all the carb in the world at that point, according to the thought process then.
Mm.
Um, Nutrition was never part of my life. I ate what I wanted,
Oh.
and it was fine. There was no proteins and carb, and I should increase more of this. I shouldn't have sugar. None of that really existed in professional sport, and I'm talking about early 90s, right? Late 80s, early 90s, long, long time ago.
Mm.
And so that's how I got interested in nutrition and went on to study macrobiotics, which was a Japanese form of nutrition initially. Focused very much on gut health after that.
Okay.
Uh, Realized through my learnings and trainings how everything really does begin in the gut, and every old modality, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's macrobiotics, whatever functional medicine, they all talk about how gut health is most important. So I started really specializing in gut health. I became a health coach along the way. And then, I got to a point with my journey where I said, I really I want I want a degree in this. I want to be able to do this professionally. I don't just want to be a health coach right now. I want to take it a little bit. I mean, being a health coach was hugely rewarding
Mm.
and very validating, but I wanted to get more into the not the medical side of it as much as understanding more how systems worked, how enzymes worked, how liver detoxification worked,
Uh-huh.
getting more into the supplements, getting more into the foods, really training in nutrition. And so I joined uh, a college in the UK. It
Okay.
was online. It was right at the start of COVID, which was also around the time that I lost my mom, So everything was all over the place. The world was so scary at that point, right? And I think for me, learning and knowledge has always been a very happy, safe space. And it's been a very sort of steady space. I've always loved to learn things I want to learn,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, Even with squash, when I played squash, it was 100% focus. I was, very much involved in the scientific part of which muscles need to work, how lung power works, and things like that. My mind's always been that way. So that's how nutrition happened. I did a degree in nutritional therapy.
Okay.
Um, and I've been working in this field now for 10 years as a nutritionist. And nutritional therapy is I don't know if you've heard the word functional medicine, but that's a big word in nutrition and lifestyle medicine and all today. So the degree I have is in nutrition therapy, lifestyle medicine, which is the UK equivalent of practicing functional medicine, but not from a medical perspective, more nutrition, supplements, diet, lifestyle, that perspective. And I'm absolutely loving this new reinvention.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, so fascinating. I mean, from sports to media and then now to nutrition, and how you've kind of just seamlessly, transitioned from one role to another. I'm sure it wasn't easy because nothing is ever easy in life, but then to be able to face, whatever challenges came your way and make those transitions, well, hats off to you. So
Thank
coming
you.
to those challenges, now I'm sure, like I said, this journey of all the transitions that you made, I'm sure they were fraught with challenges. So if you could tell us a little bit about some of those, and if you think that your gender also had a role to play in the kind of challenges you had to face.
So but I think growing up in a house where we were two sisters with the parents that I had, I was never, ever even aware of the fact that, especially growing up, that there's something I can't do that boys can do. You
Okay.
know,
Mm.
I think that was one of the safest spaces in my life, the way I was brought up by
Mm.
my parents. I could do anything any boy could do. That was the upbringing I had.
Okay.
Mm, and that I think empowered me a lot for the rest of my life and
Mm.
in how I face life, knowing that my parents had always had the faith that I have what it takes to do anything that I put my heart to doing.
Okay.
Uh, I did face some challenges with squash, I know, because those days, first of all, squash never paid that well. It was nothing near close to tennis, right?
Mm.
And professional sport didn't pay that big either in those days. So I was very much hand to mouth in my existence, and I depended very much on sponsorships, right?
Mm.
Because
Mm.
prize money was like 5,000 rupees,
Yeah.
right? And to travel anywhere was like 20,000 rupees. So I forget living and training and paying coaches and things like that. So I was very much dependent on sponsorship. And I had some wonderful sponsors who really believed in me and really had my back. But I also had people who I went to and I said, I'm playing professional sport, and they'd be like, हाँ, but तुम्हारी 2 साल में तो शादी हो जाएगी और फिर हमारा तो advertising नहीं होगा, हम क्या करेंगे, and it was always a roadblock because in those days, the only sport anybody wanted to sponsor was cricket,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah, right, right.
So I used to get really upset about that. And in fact, all through my NDTV days, when they'd ask me to report on cricket, I'd be like, no, find somebody else to do that. I'm not reporting on cricket. I interviewed lots of cricket players, of course, but
Hmm.
I would always was like, cricket got all the money and we got nothing for the other sports. But I definitely did face that
Hmm.
sort of, not, I wouldn't say discrimination, but sort of people saying, हाँ, ये तो लड़की है, इसकी शादी हो जाएगी फिर,
Right, right.
what was sponsoring her kind of thing. Um, Other than that, I have to say, not really. I don't think I have faced discrimination or faced any sort of feeling of being a woman. And in fact, I revel in the fact that I'm a woman. I feel I can do so much more. I can have babies, which men can't have. And I can do everything they do mostly, right?
Yes.
And the things perhaps that I can't do, I don't think I need to do or want to do. So I'm very happy and sort of secure where I am.
Great. Actually, so true. We can do so much more. And what we can't do, probably we don't need to do. That's so well said, you know?
Yeah.
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 So tell me, now, of course, you're in a stage of life where, you're heavily into wellness, nutrition, and all of that. So do you think your growing up years when you became an athlete and then, of course, got into squash, is there any connection between the two because you were into sports and that's how you got into wellness and nutrition?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
Because I was playing, I grew up in a very big foodie family.
Uh-huh.
Um, and food was very important. It still is very important in in our lives here as a family.
Hmm.
Also squash, like I said, nobody really looked at nutrition as a thing in those days.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, you could carbohydrates, etc., etc. Um, when I stopped playing squash and when I joined NDTV, I still remember, as absurd as it sounds, my friend and I used to be like one of the first bigger supermarkets downstairs, and we used to go down every day and pick up a packet of chips and a Coke, and that used to be our breakfast or lunch. It was that unhealthy.
Hmm.
I'm talking about. So I had no concept of nutrition and eating right and eating healthy. And now, when I sort of sit on my children's head and I say, you've got to eat more vegetables and you've got to have your fermented food and do this and do that, and they completely button off, not even listening to me,
Hmm.
and then I have to pull myself back and say, listen, you were like in your late 20s and you were doing this. So
Yeah.
give them a break, feed them as healthy as you can and don't sweat the rest of it. But my nutrition really started after Dad passed away from cancer.
Okay.
And then sort of, I got that thing in my head of
Mm.
food does play such an important role in how your life is,
Yeah,
what you eat is what you are. It
absolutely.
couldn't be truer than that, you know. I still do my treats.
Yeah.
Even with my clients, I'm not I've never been you've got to do this 100% if you want to get well and healthy. Because for all the work that I do,
Mm.
right, with my clients, what I've learned the most is it's the small, sustainable steps in the right direction
Yeah. Yeah.
that are going to get you healthy in the long term,
Right.
right? Even if it's weight loss, even if somebody comes with diabetes, even if somebody comes with hormonal issues or skin issues, eczema, migraine issues, whatever it might be,
Mm.
my approach to health is still going to the root and figuring out how can we walk this person in the direction of good health. Now, some people are really motivated and they can do everything and they're going fat, 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 and they've achieved their goals in 2 or 3 months and they're living those healthy lifestyles, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
other people, it's a journey.
Yes.
And in my opinion, rather than make drastic dietary changes that you can't sustain beyond the short term, it's better to do the things that you can in the slightly longer term, right? So does that mean, for example, saying, you know, I can't give up sugar forever,
Yeah.
right? But I know it's bad for me and therefore I shouldn't be eating it every day. But hey, can I have some chocolate on the weekend? Or can I have, you know, uh, how do I substitute sugar once or twice so that I feel like I've got my treat,
Yes.
but I'm still sticking with a healthier lifestyle. I'm not feeling deprived,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I've my, my sort of areas of being fulfilled, and that's how I approach, my nutrition as well now.
That is actually so essential because if it's all very, very regimented and all, ticking a particular box, then you're not actually living a life. I mean, you become, I think, it's more of a machine kind of an existence. So we do need those cheat days and we do need to do things which we shouldn't be doing because, it's like we're living a life ultimately. So I firmly believe in this. Yes, small steps, doable steps is what will, ultimately take you to the goal where you want to be. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, what's most important is that stress, you can't out supplement out nutrition stress,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
We have enough stress in our lives. Modern day stresses are huge.
They are.
Okay. And they affect your gut, they affect your emotional well-being, they affect your physical well-being, they
Yeah,
affect detoxification, they affect every system in your body. Why would you add another layer of stress by forcing yourself
yeah,
onto a diet that is not sustainable for you? You're just adding more stress. You get off a diet and you're back to square one because you're wanting to put everything into your mouth
yeah,
because you feel so deprived. Rather than that, what are the sustainable changes in your health you can make, right? I mean, sure, when someone comes to me and they have health concerns or they want to do weight loss or they have, goals like that, of course, we need to get on programs, right? And any program they get on is not going to be what they're used to. They
yeah.
are going to be changed,
Of,
right?
of course.
Maybe some changes need to be stricter in the short term than the long term. But the idea is over the time that they're with me
Yeah.
and we achieve the changes they need to achieve, they also learn what is sustainable out of those changes for the longer term.
Correct.
You
Correct.
know,
So coming to this, Misha, of course, nowadays, health and nutrition, this has become very big now. People are talking about it, people are following this, and everybody wants to be healthy, fitter than before. But still, normal people, lay people, they do have a lot of misconceptions about what is really, fitness and nutrition or what it should, consist of. So, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you've come across?
well, in sort of the clinical practice that I do with my clients, my approach is very much been, like I said, what are the things you can do and can sustain in the long run? So one of the biggest misconceptions for me, I mean, it works, right?
Hmm.
It for sure works, is a calorie deficit diet.
Oh, okay.
Eating less and burning more will definitely help you lose weight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No doubt about that. But is that the correct way to lose weight? Possibly in the short term for some people who need it that way, who need to lose weight, or or who are very much overweight and they need to go that route. But really, why we got here in the first place?
Hmm.
How has this weight come on in the first place? I'm just using weight as an
Yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
How does this weight come on in the first place, right? What are the lifestyle circumstances, your diet, your health, your stress, your exercise, your sleep that has got you to this point?
Hmm.
And weight loss can very much be achieved by eating the right things in the right proportions and in the right quantity. You
Hmm.
know,
Right.
my diet is not a besan chila and oat roti diet. My diet is completely bio-individual. So I think that's another big thing.
Hmm.
There is a misconception is one size fits all as far as dieting is concerned, right?
Correct.
Oh, you're vegetarian, do this. Oh, you're non-vegetarian, do this. Have 5 meals a day. That's another misconception. I'm not a 5 meal a day person. Yes, some people might need it for health reasons.
Yeah.
But by and large, our systems are not built to eat 5 times a day or 6 times a day. Small meals keep your metabolism burning.
Hmm.
I mean, the principle behind that's very simple. When you eat,
Hmm.
whatever you eat,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
your blood glucose and blood sugar tends to rise.
Correct.
Equally, your insulin levels rise,
Hmm.
right? If you eat a higher carb, starchy, refined carbohydrate meal, the spike is much higher,
Yeah. Yeah.
and therefore the insulin spike is much higher. Similarly, if you eat a, a slightly more balanced meal, you still have an insulin spike, right?
Right.
And a glucose spike. And when that insulin hits the glucose levels come down.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Now, suppose that takes 2 hours. If you've eaten a very starchy meal, that cycle will take 2 hours.
Hmm.
But when you're going to hit rock bottom because you've had such high blood sugar and therefore such high insulin levels,
Hmm.
your blood sugar crashes. So
Hmm.
in 2 hours, you're starving. And
Hmm.
you absolutely have to eat at that point because you're cranky hungry, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fat burn only happens in the period of fasting between meals. You
Yes.
have to let your blood sugar rise with what you eat, then it goes down.
Hmm.
Once your blood sugar, and more importantly, your insulin levels have time to settle, which happens at around 2 to 3 hours after a meal,
Hmm.
that's when fat happens. That's when cleaning up happens.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's when your gut health is very much dependent on the rest that you give your gut, because your gut has this sweeping mechanism that has to sort of sweep the food through your digestive tract. Now, if
Right.
you're constantly putting food in every 2, 3 hours,
Yeah.
you're not giving the system a time to sort of clean up the debris,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that backs your system.
Hmm.
So this frequent eating to keep your metabolism going is not something that I'm a proponent of at all. That's another myth. You
Hmm.
know, I I'd rather have clients who eat breakfast, who eat lunch. If they really need a snack and their blood sugar crashes at tea time, we investigate why are you hungry at tea time? Why do you want that sugar hit?
Hmm.
Why are you drowsy and sleepy in the afternoon? Let's look at your lunch and your breakfast more.
Hmm. Hmm.
And of course, when they sort of starting off with me and they need a tea time snack or something, of course, I'll give them something that's healthy. And then you go eat an early, light dinner, give
Hmm.
yourself 2, 3 hours before bed, you
Yeah.
know, that kind of thing. So those are two big myths. One is that frequent meals, you need smaller meals to boost your metabolism. And the second thing that I think is a myth is very much calorie counting.
Oh.
Maybe not a myth, but it's definitely a misconception. I don't feel that's the way back to health,
Yeah. A
you
lot of
know?
people, yes, yes, of course, they do believe that's very, very common.
And I really feel you can lose weight in a really healthy, sustainable manner. It doesn't have to be uh, by hacking your health,
Correct.
because
Correct.
that only starts your metabolism short in the long run, right? We are trying to reboost and reset your metabolism.
So looking at ways which are more sustainable, as you said, and long lasting, because that's what you eventually want. I mean, you can't be on a diet forever. So you want something which
Yeah.
is definitely more sustainable. All right. So being a person from sports, you understand and I understand that discipline and resilience, they are so crucial. You've got to be disciplined, you've got to be resilient when you are into sports. So, how have these qualities, kind of helped you in your post squash careers?
So, well, losing a match after you've worked on it for
Yeah.
really long and really hard is heartbreaking. And
Yes.
it requires a lot of resilience to be able to bounce back from that, right? I'm sure all setbacks in life, but I'm using my sport as an analogy.
Yeah.
And I think that discipline and resilience really gave me a very strong foundation
Mm-hmm.
to go on with other ups and downs in my life, of which there were many.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, we all have our trials and tribulations, right?
Mm.
And discipline and resilience is what really set the foundation for me, my ability to be able to bounce back
Yeah.
from failure, to bounce back from setbacks, to bounce back from times that were hard.
Hmm.
But equally importantly, to understand, and that's something I think I've understood only in the last 8 or 10 years, is to sometimes just meet yourself where you are, right?
Right.
And say, okay, life is very hard right now. I'm feeling really low right now, or XYZ in my life's not working right now.
Yeah.
And we hear of all these positive affirmations and gratitude and things like that, all of which are magnificent. I mean, to find gratitude immediately shifts your
Yeah.
your sort of brain energy, right?
Mm.
But sometimes it's also very important to say, you know what, life is horribly hard right now.
Yeah.
Accepting it,
Yeah.
holding it, and holding that space for yourself,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? In order to be able to build the resilience to bounce back.
Correct. Correct.
So I feel that's really important.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's not like just you press a button and suddenly you start feeling good about things and you're filled with gratitude. Some days you're not. You're just so low because things are not working out. And I think the first thing is to admit that it is bad, accept that it is bad, and then, maybe, then of course work your way out of it. But you can't be all, happy go lucky and, smiling, I mean, every single day of your life. And yeah, setbacks and all these things are and I think they're very important for you to appreciate the good times, isn't it?
Yeah, very important. Also very important to reset your nervous system, because your nervous system's in constant fight or flight, which unfortunately tends to happen with us these days as human beings. This is the lives we're living, right?
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I'll give you an example of our stress mechanism.
Okay.
In the olden days, when we were Neolithic and Paleolithic men and women,
Hmm.
stress mechanisms have been wired since then. Our wiring comes from then.
Yeah.
Not much has changed in the brain wiring since then.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, stress mechanisms were what? Survival. Am
Hmm.
I going to get food? Where am I going to get food? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Eating when you could, sometimes going days without meals.
Yeah.
And thirdly, a constant threat on life. You had a tiger that was chasing you.
Hmm.
You needed your stress hormone to spike at such a level that it would pump your adrenaline so you could run away and escape the tiger, right?
Hmm.
And live.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you did manage to escape and live, your stress hormone would then come down.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
then you'd continue. Unfortunately, our bodies can't tell the difference between that kind of stress
Yeah.
and simple psychosocial stress that we face every day, domestic stress. The maid hasn't come, I have to cook, get the children off to school, the traffic is bad, road rage, financial issues, you've had a fight with someone, different kinds of worries, small, niggling worries.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
stress response chemically is the same. Our brain and our adrenals fire in the same way,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Right.
So our stress response, which is supposed to be up, vitally important for survival, but then reset down again, that doesn't happen anymore. We're
Hmm.
on this constant stage of stress.
Correct.
And
Yes.
that's the one of the biggest issues with health today.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right. We're constantly in a state of stress for one reason
Yeah.
or the other. Okay. So tell me, Misha, a lot of people, and of course, athletes, sports people also, they struggle, with identity and purpose after they retire. Because, from that place of fame, name, everything, and, people running after you and all of those things, now suddenly you are kind of in oblivion, pretty much. So there is a transition that you have to make. And, like you, of course, found your calling in other things and, you started doing that. But was that difficult for you to do immediately after you gave up playing squash? And how did you navigate around this?
Well, identity, yeah, for sure. I
Hmm.
mean, I very much identified with my sport. I think I still do at some level, in my head. I'm
Yeah.
still that 20-year-old who played this sport for the passion of it, for the joy of it, and for the freedom it offered me, the freedom to travel, the freedom to be my own boss, the freedom to live life under my terms and my sort of circumstances. I think that's the identity that really honed me and that I still own and possess today.
Hmm.
As far as the fame was concerned, It was quite big in my squash days because I think I was one of the few female athletes that were international at that point,
Well, I remember
and
all that. I remember seeing you in newspapers. Remember seeing you on TV. So yes, yes, definitely. So
but for me, I've always been a bit of a reluctant sort of celebrity, if I may say so myself. I mean, I played squash because I absolutely loved it,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and the interviews and the articles and all of that was sort of all sort of stemmed from that, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Right.
I My focus and my goal was the sport. When I got onto television, and actually presenting sports news, I was terrified. I was not, it wasn't a space that I enjoyed being in. I loved being able to report on sport and being able to talk to people and all of that. So I've always been somewhat of a reluctant celebrity. I've not enjoyed or pursued fame as much as I've enjoyed the identity of being Misha, the squash player, or Misha, the news anchor, or today Misha, the nutritionist. I really enjoy sort of adapting and adopting that persona, and that persona is me.
Mm-hmm.
That identity is me, and all of them are me. The squash player, the sports presenter, the nutritionist, and the all of that. That identity is me.
Yeah.
But I don't think the fame was ever part of any equation for me. I was at some level very happy without it as well. I mean, I'm not, I'm very happy behind the
All
scenes.
right. Okay. 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 All right. So tell me, of course, we look around us, we see that women, they are making strides, in different professions, different vocations, making names for themselves. And that's true, even when it comes to sports and wellness, but challenges still remain. So when you look around you, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles that women continue to face, particularly in your field? The two of them, actually, sports and wellness.
Well, I would actually talk more on a larger scale and say we are still in our own country second-class citizens, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think uh, for a for a lot of us who've managed to find our voices and find our niches and find our things, I think we're very happy establishing ourselves in that micro world. But I think by and large, for women in this country, they're very much still second class citizens. And I think that's an area that definitely needs sort of to be addressed. You know, when I come to sport, I think again, sport today, women are doing wonderfully well in India. I
Yeah.
think there's so much more opportunity. There's so much more, even in my sport, the girls are doing really well. We've got a couple of brilliant players who've gotten up to the top 10. We've got a young girl who's really on her way to being world champion. I think it's fabulous. I think the opportunities are amazing. I think the sort of support the children are getting from their parents and families are amazing. Women are getting, young girls are getting, I think it's brilliant. But I still think it's an uphill battle. And
Yes.
I think that until that doesn't get resolved from a much larger perspective, I think it's a challenge we're always going to face.
True, true. Because, I think it also stems from the fact that despite all this progress and, in various fields, women still have those so many different roles to play. And when all that pressure gets to them, it does get difficult, I mean, we still have to find a way out of all that.
Yeah.
Tell me something. I mean, since COVID, there are a lot of conversations happening about mental health of people. And here I'm talking of both men and women. I mean, there is awareness, people are talking about it. And of course, people who are high achievers, for them, mental health issues could be, much bigger than, say, for a normal lay person. But when we, talk about mental health in general, but then also, of women in particular, what do you think we still need to do in this space? What more needs to be done in this space?
Well, I think the first most important thing that needs to be done is that mental health and well-being needs to be a large chunk of school life.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it needs to be introduced from the time children are small.
Hmm.
I think learning about mental health, learning how to cope with mental health, tools, strategies, I think it's still very much a sort of taboo subject
Hmm. Hmm.
in India. And I think that's ridiculous. I think especially given the lives we are facing and the sort of, whether it's the social media, whether it's the comparisons, whether it's the pace of life, the competitiveness, all of those fields, right? And this is not just for women, it's for men as
Yes.
well, for
Yes.
boys, for girls.
Yeah.
I just feel that if they actually learned more, had more opportunities, more facilities, more safe spaces to be heard and held as they grow up
Yeah. Yeah.
in school. And I'm a big advocate for that. I mean, I would love to see that happen. I would love for it to start from there. I mean, there's too much emphasis and there's not enough time. And there's so much competitiveness with the academics. Even sport in school has sadly gone down so badly. I mean, anybody who wants to play sport properly today does it outside school. At
Hmm.
2 hours, like 2 classes a week is what sports is. How can you do that? Sport in itself is such a big mental sort of health booster,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Endorphin, the energy, the release of stress, the sweating it all out, the running on a field, or it's just such an important part of school life.
Hmm.
Sports, having maybe half an hour, 3 times a week, where mental health classes, how those look and what those sort of, how that's fine-tuned is something else. But I think it should be a subject that's as important as maths or English or psychology or biology or Hindi or whatever it is. I don't think we give enough space and time to that sphere, even as young as growing up. And that's the age it really is needed, because as people become older, again, now this whole social media thing is just killing our teens, I feel. And there's not much we can do about it. You can't not give your kid a phone because unfortunately everybody else has it.
Yeah.
And then that's a whole nother issue.
Yes.
How do you monitor it? What is safe? What is not safe? How much is there overexposure? All the comparisons, all those issues. It definitely needs a safe space to be held. And then as of course we grow older, also, I think mental health is only going to be more and more the need of the hour. Because if you're not feeling okay in your head, or if you're feeling low, if you're feeling stressed, or if you're feeling less than,
Yeah.
not good enough, all of those things, right? Everything that you sort of show up for will be of a dimmer wattage than
Yes.
what you really could, you know.
Correct.
Things like yoga, meditation, pranayam, all of those need to be introduced at a very young age and need to be made compulsory.
Yes. Yes. So, like,
Quiet time.
yeah, like building a strong foundation.
Yeah.
So, if
And
you
a sound support system.
yes, absolutely. So if that is strong, then the people will be more capable, to face all these when they grow up, because all these issues, like you said, are going to be there. There's no going away or running
Yeah.
away from that. This is part and parcel of who we are and what we are in today's day and age. So just, maybe pay more attention to these things when they are still children, when they're still malleable, and you can kind of inculcate all this, because later on it does get difficult, because you do get hardwired in certain ways, so it's very difficult to kind of change. So yeah. All right. So tell me three different spaces you've been in, as I keep saying, and I've your sports and media and wellness. So have there been any lessons that you have learned, maybe all of them, from all of them collectively, or a particular lesson from each one of them?
Honestly, I think the biggest lesson in all of this, and I think it possibly applies to any career, any person, anywhere, is believing in yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think that's a challenge that everybody struggles with, right? We all feel at some level we could do more, we could do better, we're not good enough, etc., etc. I remember through my squash days, it was one of my biggest challenges. Now, in those days, nobody had mental health psychologists or sports psychologists helping you with sport and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I always felt like, oh, I could have won that match. Oh, that person's better than me. Oh, I didn't do enough. I'd done enough for me.
Hmm, hmm,
I
hmm.
didn't. I had done the best that I could do,
Correct.
you know.
Hmm.
And I think that, I mean, okay, it didn't really apply to television that much, or even now with my wellness journey, my children laugh and say, Mama, you're in your 50s and you're getting another Bachelor of Science degree in your 50s. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I really believe I can do it. This is what I want to do. And it's not the age or whatever. It's who I want to be. It's, really owning that space inside of who it is you want to be. And unfortunately, we only get that realization when we get into our 40s or 50s. But yeah, really owning that space inside you that you are enough and you are good enough and you're the best that you can be. I mean, you don't have to do that with performance or with fame or with accomplishments or with achievements. It's that quiet sense of space inside, that surety inside, that you are enough. I think that's probably my biggest learning.
And I think this is like this learning is timeless, but I think today's generation needs to kind of, imbibe this more than ever before, because I think because of all this comparison on social media and looking at people dressed, in the best possible clothes and holidays and food, you do start, kind of feeling that you are not good enough. So therefore, it's very, very important to believe in yourself, to have confidence in yourself, your self-worth. It is so, so essential to, believe in that.
Yeah.
So tell me, you've made so many career shifts, right? And of course, I mean, it was a natural progression for you as you move from one to the other. But nowadays, also, we see a lot of people. And again, I think this is where I would say social media plays a positive role, because there's so much awareness, about what all a person can do in one's lifetime. And you do get inspired when you see people trying out different things. So if you were to come across someone who wanted to, kind of do a career transition, move from one to the other, what advice would you give them?
That it's never too late.
Yes.
Most
Yes.
important,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I've reinvented myself in the last 10 years. I was 42 when my father passed away. That's when I started this whole new journey of wellness. If you'd asked me in my 30s about wellness, I'd be like, yeah, okay, spa, massage, go
Hmm.
for the odd detox. That was it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So very much wellness is an inside job.
Right. Right.
At the end of the day. But having said that, for career changes and things like that, I just feel if you're passionate about something,
Hmm.
and you really want to learn about something or you really want to go in a new way, first of all, of course, find out enough about it, dip
Yeah.
your toe in a space, do it at the same time as you're doing something else so that your steady day job doesn't go, for example. There's so much online learning available now in any field.
Hmm.
So if you feel something is interesting, you might want a career change, you might want to look at another opportunity, get in there, do a couple of courses in the evenings. You can do them at your own time and pace. They're not that expensive, some of these courses. It's just, month's course, 3 months course. Go in there, dig deep, sort of understand what it's about. But if at the end of the day, you're passionate enough about something, you will make it work.
Yes.
So don't be scared. It's never too late. You can go into any field that you want. I mean, I've so enjoyed reinventing myself from squash to media to motherhood
Hmm.
to wellness and nutrition. It's been wonderful. But did I ever plan this in
No.
my 20s? I would ever thought I'd be in wellness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that's evolved naturally. My interests have grown. I actually, in between, when I was sort of figuring out what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to do something, but
Hmm.
I knew I didn't want to do media and sort of journalism anymore. I mean, I studied organic skincare.
Oh, okay. All right.
I did 1 year course in organic skincare and I learned how to make all sorts of things. I made organic soaps, organic lotions. I really enjoyed that space. But I taught myself entirely online. Then I went into um, some art and I taught myself that online. I started studying pottery when I was 25,
Hmm.
learning pottery, not studying
Yeah.
pottery. And I still do my pottery even today. It's my time out. It's my quiet, safe space. So who's to say you can only do one thing, right? Why limit yourself?
Absolutely. I
Do
totally, totally
as
agree.
much as you're happy. And if your mind and your body are in sync,
Hmm.
you'll do it much better. If you get forced into jobs or careers, and sometimes we all do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You might have to a certain way, you might want to follow a conventional path. There might be expectations of you from the family. Your education might lead you down certain paths, but if that's not really making you happy and that's not really where you want to be, explore other options. Start off slow. Start off with an evening job. Start off, somebody wants to be, for example, a life coach. Do a life coach course, right? It's wonderful for yourself. It clarifies your goals, where you're headed, what you want, what's important in your life. And then practice. Start practicing on friends and family. See if it takes off. You want to be a potter. Go and do a pottery evening class. There's so much out there. Don't limit yourself. That's really my best piece of advice.
You should always, like you said, it's never too late. And, I think as we grow in life, growth and evolution is so important. You just can't,
Yeah.
you're not a fossil. You can't stay stuck in time and say that I can't change. And considering the exposure and the awareness that you can get in today's day and age, like the sky is the limit. You can just go and try anything. Of course, you have to have the passion for it. But before that, whether you actually have a passion or not, you will have to like test waters and see whether you like.
Figure
But
it out, learn,
exactly,
learn. Knowledge is power.
absolutely.
Everything I've done, I've self-taught myself, everything.
Yeah. So see, so if
And
you,
then, of course, gone for and then done
yeah.
accredited courses. But I didn't start nutrition by saying, oh, I'm going to do a degree in health coaching, right?
Mm.
I went in, I found online courses, I studied, I learned, I followed people, I went into their websites, I got deeper. It was like little rabbit holes. You go down, then you find a branch, then you go this way, then you find another, and you don't know where you end up. That's the joy of it.
I agree. Where there is a will, there is a way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what is next for you? Any, exciting projects or goals or anything else that you're working on? Or it's like for now, it's health and nutrition?
It's very much health and nutrition, and everything that I'm sort of expanding in with my work is related to health and nutrition because right now, there's my work with my clients is very intense, right? Because what I do, functional medicine says go to the root.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, if you have a migraine, that's a symptom. You have high blood sugar, that's a symptom.
Right.
Medicine treats symptoms. Here's a crocin pain to bring your headache down, or here's metformin to bring your blood sugar down, all of which are absolutely essential. And I'm not sort of, condoning any of that. But what I do is say, ye kyun hua? Kahan se hua? Why did this person end up at this place? What unique set of circumstances in their lives, food, diet, lifestyle, stress, exercise, all of those things have got them here. And then start unpeeling those layers of that person's onion and getting deeper and saying which systems in their body are dysregulated. Everything that I do is science-based, right? I work with blood, analyzing blood work, putting it into a functional medicine matrix, figuring out what is wrong with this person and how can we reset what is wrong with this person, right? So I think for me, that's how my work is, but it is very intensive and very labor intensive.
Yeah.
It's all me. Also, when I work with clients, it's very much one-on-one, right? So because what I do is precision nutrition. Your blood says something about you, and I will give you a nutrition plan and a supplement plan based on your blood work, based on what your lifestyle is, based on what your functional medicine matrix pops out as circumstances. What are your triggers? Where did they come from? What systems are dysregulated in you, right? That becomes very time consuming and very sort of labor intensive. And what I really want to now do is expand that reach to be able to offer what it is I offer to a much larger audience. So what I'm working on actually now is a couple of online courses.
Okay, okay.
And doing a few group programs as well. Like for example, people who have menopausal issues or perimenopausal issues. There's so many women who have perimenopausal issues. Now, the cleaning up of the diet and the lifestyle for those kinds of issues, a lot of it, at least the foundation level is generic, right? Eat this, you should add this, eat more flax seeds, eat less this. It's quite specific. It's quite sort of a broader foundation. Diet, lifestyle, sleep, stress, again, same things, right? Fix all of that. That is the foundation of health. Then as you go up the pyramid, then you're looking at hormonal balance, then you're looking at longevity medicine, you're looking at anti-aging. All of that becomes much more precise.
Correct.
But the foundations, which is such an important part of health and wellness, those foundations that we don't all of us do. And so I feel like I can expand what I do and expand my reach by doing more online courses, by doing more group programs, by doing more lectures and talks, by sort of reaching out to a larger audience, hiring some health coaches to work with me and train the way I work. Maybe even write a book in a year or two.
Wonderful.
All of that's in the pipeline. Yeah.
Great. That'll be wonderful. I mean, of course, you put everything down and, like you said, reach more people. Because if you have that ability, you have that knowledge, then spread that knowledge, spread that awareness. I think it's the most wonderful thing, anyone can do. All right. So, Misha, while we have come to the end of the conversation in terms of, the questions, but I do have one little thing, which is the rapid fire round, which is 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. So, all set?
All set.
All right. So, the first one wellness tip that everyone should follow.
Intermittent fasting is not for everyone.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Okay. Next. One thing that you miss about being a professional squash player.
Being in the zone. And in the zone, I mean, when you're playing a match and you're in such an internal space, you're in it's sharp focus. Nothing else exists but you and this bubble that you're in, you know. And it's really, when we talk about hyper focus and mental clarity, I don't think I've ever had sharper clarity and sharper being in the moment, in the focus than when I played a squash match. So I miss that.
All right. Okay, next. One thing that you don't miss about being a professional athlete or squash player.
Waking up at the crack of dawn, traveling, the backpack. Actually, there's not much that I don't miss. Perhaps, no, because that was in my 20s also. When I was playing squash, I was really good. I wouldn't have late nights. I would miss out on a lot of social events. I wasn't doing things that other sort of 20, 21-year-olds were doing it. But when I stopped playing squash, then I sort of, indulged in that. But I don't think anything replaces the high of being a professional athlete. And for me, there was no downside to it.
Okay. All right. Next, one piece of advice you'd give your younger self.
It all works out in the end. Just chill.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. And lastly, what is your guilty pleasure food?
My guilty pleasure food.
Yeah.
It's pizza.
All right. So I agree with you because it's mine too. You just, biting into that first slice and, the hot pizza, the cheese melting in your mouth. Okay. All right. So not talking to a nutritionist about that. So anyways, Misha, absolutely wonderful conversation. And of course, like I've mentioned during the conversation, I have seen you on NDTV. I have seen newspaper clippings. And I think those days we also had these magazines, Sports Week, Sports World. So I have seen you and, you were like a role model because, when you see a woman following her dreams and, reaching that pinnacle, it does inspire other people and women in particular. So getting you on the show was actually one of my dreams come true. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolutely wonderful and fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor. And it's been lovely to be able to open up and have such a nice, relaxed chat and not realize that I'm on TV or screen or whatever it might be. It's been very comfortable. You really have a knack of making people feel comfortable. And it's been an absolute pleasure and joy. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.